Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dialogue Podcast. Today, I am going to be having a conversation with Shaylyn Ford. Normally, she does these intros, and normally our format is she'll kind of surprise me with a conversation. I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but we kind of flipped it up and switched it today. I'm going to be later this week actually recording some videos to help pastors in the area of physical health. It's a part of an organization, and they're trying to help like in all different dimensions of leaders and pastors' lives, like emotional health, mental health, spiritual health, financial health. And then they asked me to put together some content on physical health. And so I decided to kind of take this dialogue and to go back and forth with Shaylyn on this subject. I kind of had put together some notes and some content. So we're actually going to do today what we do all the time. Actually, when I'm working on sermons or things out of the Bible, I'll run it past her. She'll react to it, and then we'll kind of refine it. And so I thought, hey, what an opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone, finish up this content that I'm going to share with them, but then I'm going to share it with her, and I'm going to share it with you, and I hope it's helpful to you. God bless. See you soon. Let's get in. Without any further ado, welcome to Dialogue.
Greg Ford.
Yes.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Dialogue Podcast.
Hey, thank you. And by the way, I know you start every week by just saying Greg
announcing
Ford,
your name.
Announcing my name, and I don't know how to react.
I've noticed.
Yeah,
you don't know.
I feel a little deer in headlights.
You don't say like yes or
how may I help you,
Shaylyn,
yes.
Or I don't need you to ask how you may help me.
Yeah.
How would you like me to start this? All right, let's start over. Let's start over. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. How's it going this week? I can't. Yeah, I can't. I just feel like I need to announce you.
I need to think about it. Like
I need to think about a new entry. That will be my homework this week. I won't do that to you anymore.
I mean, you can. I just need to. I feel like I get caught off guard every week by it, so I just need to be ready.
Yeah, you need to. At this point, you should be prepared. It's been a hot minute.
Maybe we could come up with one of those like. So true confessions. I've never seen or heard or listened to Crime Junkie. But you've listened to it so much. I've literally never heard one episode.
Shout out Ashley and Britt.
Yeah,
we love you guys.
There's no shade. There's no animosity. There's no reason. I'm not boycotting or anything like that. But I just haven't.
Right.
I'm not a huge
I have
crime
heard every
fan.
single episode they've ever made, by the way.
That's wow. I know you're a huge
multiple
fan of crime.
Yes.
And so I know you like to.
That's not it, but okay.
I mean. You watch a lot of crime.
Fan of crime.
You listen to and watch. You feed your mind with lots of crime. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I just call it spade a spade.
Crime shows, sure.
Yes,
but
crime shows.
Crime,
which are built around crime.
It's about solving crimes. Not. Okay. I'm not a fan of crime itself.
It's questionable, but my point is, okay. I'm not as much a fan.
Right.
I like to think about not.
But you're saying
crime.
their intro.
So their intro, I've never seen the show, but I've heard you do it over and over again.
Our boys do it.
And it's become this thing. So maybe we need to find one of those because it's like, hi, I'm Ashley Flowers and I'm Britt.
Okay.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Never seen the show. Wouldn't know Ashley Flowers if she came in or Britt.
That's iconic.
But because their intro is so memorable.
So do you want me to just be like, I'm Shaylyn Ford.
And I'm Greg. I don't know. That feels like just too much of a rip-off of what they did. So
maybe
we'll just
need
give it some
people
thought.
to write in, send us a message and tell us how you would like us to start the episodes. So, by the way, did you notice my shirt today?
I did. That is a true vintage.
True vintage tee.
That was, I think, probably 10th or 11th grade.
Greg Ford t-shirt.
My t-shirt.
This is Greg's high school football shirt, and I ganked it.
Yeah. I mean, that thing has stood the test of time.
It honestly, like, I don't know.
They don't make them like that anymore, man.
But the fact that this has lasted since like 10th grade for you and
It's probably Russell. It's probably Russell Athletic.
We'll have to look it up. But it's like not threadbare. It's in really good condition. Yeah. CVCA, shout out. Just all the shout outs today. Also, some little piece of local news for you here. I don't know if you've heard, but Love is Blind, the show Love is Blind from Netflix, is coming to Columbus.
Okay.
They are doing casting calls out of Columbus right now. So all of our single friends, I mean, just if you're from Columbus, I feel like probably half of our church Like the single half is all going to audition. And
yeah. So you have to be from Columbus, or you have to be from Ohio to be on the show, or will people come in from all over the place?
That's a good question. I think they specifically pick people from the area that they cast, right? Which is kind of why it's been an issue in the past, because like these people accidentally know each other somehow, right? Because they've crossed paths. They live in the same town. So I do wonder what they're going to do about that. But I think part of the reason they did that was so that people wouldn't be like falling in love with someone that then lives on the other side of the country, right? It's like, oh, well, now we can both just move back to Columbus
immediate complication together. It would be.
I mean, because you have to, the premise is like you live in the same house even after you get out of the show. You guys go live in the same house for like, 30 days or 3 weeks, something like that. And you have to get back to work. You're living your daily lives. So like it needs to be in the Columbus area, I guess. So
I feel like we did a version of Love is Blind. We
kind of did.
Have we talked about this before?
We haven't talked about this before.
I mean, we spent we saw each other. So it's not like we didn't, like on the show, they have no clue what this person looks like.
We knew what each other looked like.
They have no idea. Which I wonder at this point if that's true. Like, they could certainly go back, right? You're talking to some guy and he's got a unique name or whatever, and you go back to your room at night. Like, how are they stopping a person from at night going on their phone and looking?
I don't think they have their phones.
So they take their phones.
I don't think they have any access to social media. You're completely cut off.
So we knew what each other looked like. On the show, they have no idea. It's just simply connecting, mentally, emotionally through conversation. And then the big reveal, whatever. And that goes all kinds of ways. Like some people are like, oh my goodness, this is great. The voice matches the physical appearance. And then some people are like
weirded out.
Yeah. It's like breaks down or whatever. But I feel like we knew what each other looked like. So we had,
but that was about it.
but then we didn't see each other for
like at all
a long time.
So for people to understand, we weren't like on a dating show or something. We met in August. We were just like briefly introduced. Then we had our first date a couple weeks later. We were both in Washington, D.C. for a convention. So we met up there, ended up spending like the whole day together, multiple days in a row, just like hit it off like that. And then after that, you went back to Texas because you were going to college in Texas at the time. I came back here to Ohio. And so our entire relationship was long distance. This was in 2003. So like people, we didn't have FaceTime. It wasn't a thing. Sorry. Like we couldn't talk. So it was literally just over the phone, phone cards at certain points. Because we didn't even have cell phones until we got engaged. We're super old. Dang. Go ahead. What were you going to say? Speak for myself?
No, I was just thinking, sorry. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, okay.
I was actually going to slightly change the conversation, but I want you to finish.
I'll just wrap this up quick. But anyways, so we met in August. We did not see each other again in person until October. You came to see me one time. So all that time it was just talking on the phone. And like I said, no FaceTime. It truly was. We were sending pictures in the mail, like physical pictures in the mail.
Walgreens.
And then you came home in November for Thanksgiving and proposed to me in the Columbus airport. So that was like the second time, first date, and then one other time that we were actually like together in person. And then we had to go our separate ways again up until we got married. Even when we were engaged, we weren't together. You had to finish up school in Texas. And then even when you moved back to Ohio, you moved to the town that we were going to move to, and I wasn't there yet. So we actually never lived in the same town till we lived in the same house. I remember on our honeymoon being like, this is the most consecutive days we've ever spent together, like in a row. It's so, unusual circumstances, but it worked out. It did. Love is Blind worked for us.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of.
All right. So mind if I slightly change?
Switch it up.
Okay. So I was actually thinking about reality shows, and I was thinking a dating reality show at any point in my life would have been a heck no. Like to me, it seemed that would be about a horrible idea. Like I wouldn't have ever wanted to be on a dating show. But I was thinking about reality shows in general. Like what reality show, if you were going to be on one, what reality show would you want to be on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Some sort of competitive show. Obviously, I guess most of them are competitive, so that doesn't really mean much. Probably The Challenge. I wish.
Oh yeah.
Like I wish there was some reason, that they would want me on The Challenge because I love that show, and I feel like I could like really train and get ready for that and do well on that show probably, or at least like hold my own. That feels like it's up my alley. You know what? Another one is like, I wish that I was better. My sewing skills are like marginal, they're less than average. But I do love designing things, and I would just need more time than they give them on the design shows. But like something like that. Oh, what am I saying? One of the makeup shows.
Yeah.
Like one of the, face off type shows or whatever, like that. Actually, I kind of forgot those existed for a minute. 100%. That's what I would want to do. I would love to be on one of those.
Nice.
Let me just go face off with some prosthetics.
All right. So for me, I think the challenge would be, I think it would be cool, but that's not my number one because
really
it's too
that
long.
Surprises me.
It's too long.
Okay.
It's like they're there for weeks and weeks and weeks. So
a lot of them you're there for weeks and weeks at this point.
I know, but not the one I'm about to say.
Okay.
It's not on the air anymore. The show's done. But do you remember Broken Skull Ranch with Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right, so it's like
that was a great show. Are you sure it's not? Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's done.
I thought it was on like CMT. Maybe we just don't see it.
It was on CMT. It was on CMT. But Broken Skull Ranch.
That was good.
It was one day.
Yeah.
It was one day.
Like that was we binged that show.
Yeah, it was like the challenge, but down
down
to people
to a
in
day.
your weight class.
Yeah.
And you do these challenges, and then it's just like one day of just exhaustion, hard hitting. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that now, frankly, because I'm too old for that stuff at this point.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I am. I've had too many injuries. I wouldn't be too good at that. But like 10 years ago, I would have loved to have been on that show.
You would still kick butt today.
Well,
I just love you. And
I would have to train for about a year.
Oh, you would not stop.
At least.
You act like you don't go down and bench massive amounts of
but what I don't do is
like every day.
Like wrestle, these guys are down in like trench warfare and all this stuff.
You know what?
It was a great show.
It was a great show. That I appreciate you bringing that up and reminding me, because that was like, wow, back in the archives of my brain. I hadn't even thought of it. Another, if I had to pick my like single day show that I would be on, do you remember the show Man vs. Bear? Where they would have like you go like up against a grizzly bear in challenges, like you had to do eating challenges. Yeah, no, I'm good on that. Or like that sounds like a blast to me. No, I thought that seemed really, really fun. I would absolutely do Man versus Bear.
Not me.
Okay, moving on. The Olympics. Do 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 do. What are your favorite things so far that you've seen at the 2024 Paris Games? Highlight moments.
You gotta love the pommel horse dude.
the pommel
horse guy.
Pommel horse guy has just become like a legend. He's an absolute icon.
He's from
overnight.
Worcester, Mass, but he sounds like he's from Columbus, Ohio.
I was gonna say he doesn't sound like he's from Worcester, Mass.
And he's awesome. That was fun.
We love a good like Clark Kent to Superman moment, and nobody knew what this guy was capable of. That was super fun. Loved that.
I think the 100 meters is always awesome.
That's like your favorite thing.
It's awesome. And I mean, it was crazy close.
What like was it 5 1,000ths of a second?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It was literally like by a nose hair.
I literally didn't believe he won. I was like, what?
We rewound it and watched it like 6 times.
I mean, the photo finish, like it's literally on a lean.
Yeah.
It's by a nose. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, 5 1,000ths of a second.
Doesn't get much closer than that.
Yeah. And then it was like, they said, I want to say it was the top 5 times.
I think top 6 times.
Or 6 maybe would have medaled
at the
Rio
Games.
and I think
Some
in
of
Tokyo.
them in Tokyo too. Yeah.
So I mean, it was like, I mean, that was as competitive.
Stellar performances from everyone.
And then the woman from St. Lucia that won,
was cool to watch.
on a wet track, and just, I mean,
owned
absolutely shut it down.
That was incredible.
And then St. Lucia, I mean, obviously I have no, I'm not
like
from St. Lucia.
There's like 200,000 people on the whole island, and they are just losing their minds. They're so excited.
You gotta love that.
That was really cool. I've loved seeing Leon Marchand and all of, every time he comes up for a breath, everybody cheers. Yeah. Hey, across the pool.
I have to say, like, I'm not sure what it is, and maybe I'm just noticing it more now, but it definitely seems like more than ever, these competitors are kind of for each other. So for example,
I love that.
Even like, obviously Michael Phelps is all done swimming, but they in one of Marchand's events, they had Michael Phelps like up in the booth talking about him, and he was so incredibly positive. He was like giving him his flowers, and you go, Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in history, which you go, well, if you're that decorated, you can be positive about people. But often, man, it's the people who are the most decorated who don't want anyone in their stratosphere, right?
Yeah, no,
they're the biggest
you do
haters.
See that, yeah.
But he was so like effusive in his, in his honor, and the way he talked about Marchand, I was like, man, that was cool. And then when Simone Biles and Jordan Childs bowed down to Andrade, they were like,
what a
giving
moment.
her love, like,
I mean, I got teary over that because I was just like, I love seeing true sportsmanship and celebrating each other. It took nothing away from the absolute great that Simone is to go, this frankly, woman pushed me to be better.
Yeah. And frankly, in the floor routine, she stepped out, I think at least once, maybe twice. So, and lost probably by that margin. So she could have been ticked, feeling like either mad at herself or feeling like, it should have been me. But instead she just gives
such a healthy approach. Yeah, I thought that love that.
That was pretty cool.
The other thing you see is like you were mentioning in swimming, just people going across the lanes to congratulate one another, or like when Katie Ledecky pulled her teammate up onto the gold platform. She was a bronze podium. And it was her first medal, and she brought her up. Like, just beautiful, beautiful moments like that. That is definitely my favorite thing. By the way, little Olympic shout out for you, and on the podcast, Carly Patterson, a gymnast from the Athens 04 team, liked a reel that you love. I was like, okay, all right, I see you, Greg.
The Carly Patterson?
Like the one and only Carly Patterson. So Carly, we love you.
Yes.
If you ever want to be on this show, just let us know.
Tell some gold medal stories.
We would love to sit around like this. Just listen. So you actually had some stuff that you wanted to talk about this week that I'm excited. We're flipping the script a little bit. You're bringing something to me for the first time that I have not heard. Usually it's me bringing a topic to you that we haven't talked about ahead of time. So take it away, Greg Ford.
All right. Well, for those, not that anyone would know this, but kind of each week, like, we're going to kind of do here what we do all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And working on content together. So, I preach most every week, and each week I'll have some thoughts around a scripture, and then in some of the different elements of communication, you have what we call exposition, which is how to explain or teach the text, like what's the context, who said it, who are they saying it to, what point's being made, all that. And then you have illustration. So how do we illustrate the point? How do we bring it to life? And you can use a physical object. You could have a parallel story or something like that. And then we have application. Okay, cool, man. That's what the Bible says. Yeah, I get your point. How does that apply? And how do we apply that and contextualize to our world? And so often I'll have an idea where maybe I'm clear on the exposition, but I want to really think in terms of broad application or current application. How would this verse, if Jesus or Matthew or Paul was writing this today, what would they be talking about, right? So pretty much every week I'll say, hey, Shaylyn, here's what I'm thinking. And I'll ask you to react to it. And you've made every single message that I've ever done that with, you've made it better. Like no, seriously, like you've improved it because you've added your perspective, and you've helped me. Often you've forced me to think something through that maybe I thought I'd fully thought through, but I hadn't. So
I think a big part of that for you, by the way, is not so much what I contribute, because I don't think that's that much. It's probably pretty minimal. But I think because you are an external processor, it also is just helpful for you to even just say things out loud.
Get the wheels turning.
You could say it out loud to a mannequin and it would get better. So don't try to give away too many of your flowers. They belong all in your bouquet.
That's nice of you to say, and I don't want to argue with you, but I would say that's not true. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We'll do a little multitask here, and I'm going to throw some content your way, have you react to it. So, and here's where it's coming from. This week, actually later in the week, I'm shooting some videos for an organization that basically works to support pastors across the world. And they're doing something to, obviously pastors are content creators, but they're making some content for those guys and ladies to really look at being a healthy person, right? Be a healthy leader. So they're talking about like financial health and emotional health and mental health. And then they want to have some videos on physical health. And so they asked me, hey, would you put together like 3 short sessions that's going to go out to pastors? And to be honest, I don't exactly know how they're going to distribute it. I don't know if it's like some private content or if it's just going to live open source. Like, I don't even know. But I'm doing that Thursday. I've written a bunch of stuff down. So I wanted to kind of throw it your way. Okay. And have you react to it.
Sure.
Feel free, by the way, to interrupt, like as I'm talking, like, because I'll just keep talking if you don't interrupt. So if you have like, a thought, like you can just chime in or give me the hairy eyeball or raise your hand or pound your fist on the table or something like that. Okay.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, here we go. So physical health, again, targeted at pastors, but I think this applies. Some of the application will be directly at pastors, but I think a lot of it would apply more broadly than that. Okay, so the first thing with physical health is to start with why. So why is physical health important for pastors and leaders? And I was kind of thinking about like kind of the wrong reason to approach it. Like I think sometimes people go, well, pastors or leaders that are focused on physical health, it's a vanity thing, right? They just want to look good. You're up in front of people, you got all these eyes on you, and you want to look your best. Or you're on camera, okay, and you're looking at yourself, and so there certainly could be an issue of vanity. Interestingly enough, the concept of selfish ambition, right, or vanity actually comes up a few times, like even as like the Apostle Paul in the New Testament is lumping together like groupings of sinful behavior. So like in Galatians 5, where there's the fruit of the Spirit, right before he lists off love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all that, he sort of contrasts that to the acts of the flesh is what he calls it. And so he says, he lists a bunch of stuff, and it's stuff like wild parties, orgies, drunkenness, sorcery, okay, all this kind of stuff. And then in there, he throws in being divisive, he throws in jealousy, and he throws in selfish ambition. And you think about that, like generally when we're like, the world sins and people sin and everybody sins, we need to crack down on sin. Some of those more overt ones that would kind of go, whoa, like kind of really eye-popping sins would come to the surface, but selfish ambition. And I think if we're all looking at ourselves and you go, ambition isn't wrong, like we should be ambitious, but I think it's a continual submission to God. It's a continual search me and search my heart, Lord, has this become about me? So I think like when we think about physical health, if I'm simply doing this out of vanity, that's the wrong reason to do it. Okay. So why would we do it? So the first thing I have is physical discipline spills over into other areas of our lives for better or worse. Now, I'm not saying that you certainly could be physically healthy and completely undisciplined in what goes in your eye, what goes in your mind, what comes out of your mouth, all of that. So it's not necessarily guaranteed, but I do think that we are interconnected beings tremendously, right? Heart, soul, mind, strength, neighbor, emotional, physical, spiritual, all this stuff is intertwined. I can't just take one thing out and not the other. If my body is in a healthy place, then I am going to have, better mental health and emotional health. That is going to impact it because they're inextricably linked. And so I think often, like, if I can get those areas under control, it has an impact on other areas of my life. So think about this. Jesus, right? In Matthew 4, it's the temptation in the wilderness. He's had what we would call pretty incredible discipline. He's 40 days of fasting. He hasn't eaten. He's brought that appetite into submission. He's actually starting to get towards the area where you can't really live much longer than that without eating. Like, he's really pushed it. And of course, the enemy's tempting him emotionally, spiritually. And his ability to withstand indulging emotionally or spiritually or whatever, I think was, in some ways, at least the picture we're given, was related to the submission he brought his flesh into. And so, again, it's not a guarantee, but I think it's a good practice. I'll pause there and give you a chance to react to anything that I've said so far. If you want to, don't feel like you have to.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think I have anything at the moment.
Okay. There's more along the lines of discipline, right? So, the Apostle Paul talks about this. He's like, I discipline my body like an athlete. And of course, he wasn't doing anything athletic, but he uses that idea. He's like, essentially, I make my body my slave. And I've said this before at our church, like, the body makes a good slave, but a terrible master. And if you think about in the spirit of Romans 6, where it talks about people who indulge their flesh, he's like, he goes, back when you did whatever you wanted to do, he says, you thought you were free because you just did whatever you felt like doing. So you said, I'm free to do anything. He said, but what did it do is it actually created bondage. So you thought you were free, but you were actually enslaved to something. You were in bondage to something. And so I think in the same way, like, we could go, hey, I can eat anything I want, or I can do whatever I want. And it's like a faux freedom. Like, actually, when you're disciplined, it actually leads to more freedom because you don't need it. You're not giving into those cravings as much. And of course, this is actually a conversation we're going to have later in the year at our church around discipline versus legalism, right? Where does that spill over? Now you get into where legalism is about obsession around the letter of the law. I'm judging everyone else by all of their decisions and what they do or don't do. I'm putting myself up on a pedestal. And at worst, maybe I think that's what I have to do to please God or for God to accept me. And so you start making it this works-based thing. I think it's a mistake to go, well, yeah, we're not saved by works and God is gracious. Therefore, just do whatever I feel like doing, right? That's also in Romans. Paul says, like, do we sin so that grace may abound? No. So I think when we take that approach to our physical health, the idea of not being legalistic and becoming obsessive around whether it's diet, exercise, sleep, whatever, but really seeing it as a discipline. Like, I want to do this, in a way that's going to help me be healthy. I'm going to honor and have these boundaries. Keep rolling, or do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I'm curious, how do you encourage people to navigate that line of having discipline but not slipping into legalism?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say it's pretty unique per person. So I think like knowing yourself and knowing like where would you have a tendency to slip into like obsession, or if the action is done more out of negative energy than positive energy. So if it's like, it's almost like I was talking to my cousin today, this morning, about like spending time with the Lord in the morning, you know, like waking up, whether it's praying or reading your Bible or whatever that might be. And then going like, what is it? Like paying attention to your emotions around that practice. Mm-hmm. So it's like, am I doing it because I'm afraid that God will be jealous if I don't, that God's going to be upset because like, you know, you just went right to work. You drank your coffee and you just went to work and you didn't even talk to me. He's going to be upset. So am I checking a box? Am I doing it because I feel like it makes me a better Christian? Or am I doing it because for the same reason that I would want to connect to a life-giving relationship and even to know him better, to maybe dig a little bit deeper in what's being said and in that text and what does it mean for me and to receive life from it. And I think when it's life-giving, like, you know, qualitative, and you look forward to it more than when I don't do it, I feel bad. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it would be the difference between like you and I, if I knew that if I didn't text you that day or I didn't call you that day, you know, I was going to get home, you're going to be real mad at me. So then I'm doing it. Okay. I don't want her to, versus like, you're my person, connection to you is life-giving. And so I'm in between meetings and I'm just call you and I'm thinking about you, check on you. I think that's healthy. So I think with a lot of these disciplines, when it just becomes fear-based, when it becomes, you know, and there's a lot of negativity connected to it, or I think then you start to go, man, it's starting to maybe cross the line a little bit into legalism versus freedom.
And that's an interesting one too, because I think a lot of people go, well, cool, like you are excited to talk to your wife because you really like her, but like I don't like going to the gym. And so that's where I think it has to come back to your why, right? Is it instead of it being a positive why and a negative why, so that versus a negative why, and so that when it's hard, it's not like, well, I'm doing this because I'm, you know, scared of something, or I'm worried about how I look or how I'll be perceived or whatever, but it's doing it from a place of, I really want to be healthy. I really want to, you know, I want to be around for my kids. That's a big one for a lot of people. Or I want to, you know, I talked to a client of mine this past week that has an incredible story. And she was like, I realized I was on track to not be able to ever be a grandmother. And I want that. Mm-hmm. She's like, you know, I lost a family member in their 50s from the same weight-related issues that I was dealing with, and I was headed down the same tracks. That, you know, I realized I'm not going to have these experiences. So I think having a more positive why instead of a negative one, it seems to me would be the big thing that would help you to stay disciplined when you're not necessarily feeling like it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think often like vision that people will have for their lives, vision will often start from a vision of what not to be. So if you had a bad mom or a bad dad, so to speak, you go, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like my parents, or I don't want to be like this leader. And at some point, it's like the Olympics, like the swimmers, right? They do that flip and kick off that wall to get momentum. And for a while, you know, however many meters, they're just kicking off the wall and they're living off of that momentum. But eventually you got to start stroking towards something. You got to start swimming towards something.
That's a good analogy.
So I think like a lot of people live off of a vision of what not to be, that wall back there. I'm kicking away from it. But pretty soon, if that's all you live off of, I think you really start to lose momentum. Mm-hmm. At some point you got to go, okay, so what am I going to be?
Yeah.
It's not just here's the mom I don't want to be. Here's the person I don't want to be. It's what person do I want to be?
Yeah.
You know, you said earlier too, you're like, threw in like, not everybody loves exercise, whatever. when I'm talking about health, I'm not advocating that everybody needs to be a gym rat and everybody needs to go in and hit a personal record on this, that, or the other thing. I don't think that's necessarily, you know, the right answer for everyone. You know, I have my own experience with it, but I grew up playing sports, and in a lot of ways, like exercise in the gym, I feel as comfortable there as I do in the walls of the church. Like it's like a natural habitat for me. So to me, it's like, I enjoy it. It brings life to me. I'm even like some of the struggle that I have, like, yeah, there's sometimes it's miserable and my head's pounding or I can't get my breath or whatever it is. But that puts me in touch, like with my inner child, you know, it's like, yeah. So that's me. I'm not saying everyone needs to do that. And so that's definitely not the message I want to send. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I think as I'm saying this, if someone's not careful, they'll be watching this video or listening and going, okay, this dude's a meathead. He loves being in the gym and he's trying to make me like him. No, I'm not. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. But what I'm trying to start with is the idea that, you know, if we can bring, even if you weren't a big exercise person, you go literally going for a walk, like you're just getting your body moving a little bit. You're not trying to necessarily build your muscles or something like that, but do that, and to bring some discipline around, you know, your eating, or again, what you're putting in your body, like really being intentional about that. It does spill into other areas. You know, that's kind of the point I'm hoping to make there.
Yeah.
Okay. The second is that it's a visible discipleship opportunity. Okay. A visible physical discipleship opportunity. So you think about, if we were to talk to someone about spiritual growth, they're like, hey man, I want to grow strong spiritually. Okay. How the heck do you do that? So a great analogy to guide someone would be physical health. You'd say, well, what are you ingesting? Because whatever you ingest, you digest, and that becomes you, whatever it is that you digest, right? So the idea of, and we've talked about this on this podcast before, about mental diet, right? Spiritual diet, the things that those things are becoming me. And then we would say, now you got to do something with it. So even if you ate the perfect diet, if you never exercised, you would never turn that potential energy into energy, right? That's what that food is. It's potential energy. Now you got to go work it out, and that's how you become flexible and strong and all these kind of things. So I think when you think about the physical body, right, as a leader, as a mom, as a dad, as a manager, as a business leader or pastor or whatever you're doing, that physical health, it's an opportunity, I think, to put up in front of people a physical picture of spiritual health. I think if you're up there and you're super fit and healthy and you run marathons and you do whatever you do, and then there's no depth behind your character or what you're saying, I think it rings pretty hollow, pretty shallow. But I think if you can bring the two together, I think it sets a tremendous example. And I think even using your own struggles physically, whether it's, man, I struggle with, frankly, eating my emotions, to share that and to go, often, when I'm low, this is what my impulses want to do. Mm-hmm. And so this is a battle that I fight. I think sharing that with people, like I remember, like when it's kind of become a bit of a joke around our church about how many tendons I've torn, trying to do physical things. Mm-hmm. But I've tried to use those every time there's a rupture, or every time there's an injury, or every time there's something, to use that as a discipleship opportunity. Like, some of you know what a rupture is, right? And it wasn't your Achilles, it was your marriage. It was, there's a rupture in your mind, or there's, and so to use that physical, and I think to help take people on a journey that's even deeper. So if you think about the concept of struggle, you think about the concept of transformation, right? What's so inspirational about you watch a show like The Biggest Loser or some of those health shows where you see someone transform? Mm-hmm. Okay, they take a year's journey and they put it into 1 hour, but you're watching this transformation And so I think like that idea of transformation, most people, it's not like they come to church, hear a good sermon, go down to the altar, cry, get up, boom, problems are all solved. No, it is a process of discipline, fixing my mind on the right thing, whatever things are true, think on these things, making the next right decision, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow,
yeah,
there's been a transformation. And so again, I think physically, even for maybe some leaders or pastors who aren't where they want to be right now, instead of letting that be shame inducing, they go, you know what? I'm going to see this as an opportunity to show transformation. Mm-hmm. And frankly, some people, to see something like that, it does trigger them to go, man, if they can do that, I think I could go through a healing. I think I could go through a transformation, internally even. Thoughts?
No, I think that's very accurate. The fact that people, everyone's journey is very different. And so maybe the transformation that somebody needs to make is in a different sphere of their life, but that can be an inspiration for someone to make that kind of a change. I think that's a really great point. And I do think that, like you said earlier, sometimes the changes that we are experiencing physically even pour over into other pieces of our lives as well. If you start feeling like, and it can go in lots of different orders, right? But I think if we start experiencing a snowball effect of like, I got this one area of my life kind of lined up and orderly and whatever. And so now I feel like I have the momentum to go be able to get some control over this other area of my life that has been feeling like it's spinning out of control.
Yeah.
I have confidence to take on this next set of problems. So a lot of times it doesn't always start with the physical piece. Sometimes it starts with other things that then make you feel like, okay, now I have the headspace. Like I can go to the gym and I can focus, or I can go take a walk, or I can, I can cook ahead. Like I can plan my meals so I'm eating healthier. But I think that is a very valuable point to just bring out the way that those things can snowball into one another and just bring overall change in your life and in the people around you too.
So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. So that the first point that I made about the why of physical health for leaders, pastors, is physical discipline spills over into other areas for better or for worse. So just making a note to myself, certainly we've seen the ripple effect or the compounding effect of for good. Like you get this thing in order, you get your body in order, you get your emotions in order, you get your relationships in order, you get, that whole, you can either spiral down or up, right? But I've seen, somebody who ends up in making a really bad decision as a leader, or ends up in a really bad place, even beyond just they made one bad decision, but they end up in a really bad place. Often it was that ripple effect, and it could have started physically, right? You've seen a lot of people that they were struggling physically. It starts affecting them emotionally, starts making more bad physical decisions. Their mental health's not good. How does that affect your relationships? Often it pushes people away. It's the people maybe who could be life-giving for you or being repelled or whatever it might be. And it spirals down. And so I think like I've seen a lot of leaders, you're like, man, how'd you get to that point? Well, you didn't just wake up and say, man, I don't really want to mess my life up today.
Yeah.
But often it starts in the heart, soul, mind, strength, or neighbor relationship.
Yeah, it starts trickling into everything.
And then now my body decisions, okay, instead of helping to catch me in that death spiral and start, you know what, I'm going to get this back on track, they just keep going down. Third thing. So let me recap. Why does physical health matter? Well, physical discipline spills over into other areas of our lives for better or for worse. 2, it's a visible discipleship opportunity. And then 3, longevity, right? So I had a friend, actually it was one of my dad's college friends. He used to come spend time at our house. I'm not going to name him, but one time he came, super awesome guy, really funny guy, cool guy. I always really liked him. And when I was, I think it was when we were living in Toledo. I was a youth pastor. They're actually on the mission field, and they came to our church to spend a few days. And he told me he had a life goal to read 1 million pages, which I was like, what? And he'd been tracking since he was like in his early 20s. And at that time, I mean, he would have been in his 60s. And he had been tracking. He was on track to read 1 million pages. I was just like incredibly inspired by that. I was like, that's amazing. I remember asking him, give me your top 3 books. Like, what have you read? Like, I want to know. Because I'm thinking, a guy who's on his way to 1 million pages, like, what are the best pages, that you've read?
Yeah.
And so I just got so much out of that conversation. And then I remember at the end, I was like going to leave to go exercise. I was like, hey, you want to go exercise with me? And he's like, nah. He's like, I don't exercise. Ha, ha, ha. And he's like, my idea of exercise is 2 donuts at the end of a pretzel rod. Ha, 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 And I was like, what? I was like, my man, you're going to read 1 million pages and not have the body to carry that brain around. I was like, I'm not saying you got to go be Mr. Olympia. You don't need to. I'm not saying you got to go be in the Arnold Classic or the Olympics, but at very least, like, you don't want this thing given out while this thing is in peak condition.
Or before you get to 1 million pages.
Before you get to 1 million pages. But what happens? You get to 1 million pages. You are now in your prime to help humanity. And your body falls apart. Like, that's tragic. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And so I probably came off a little judgmental, but he was like, that's a darn good point. And he kind of laughed it off, and I don't think he's worked out since. But my point is, to me, it's like, look, if you're feeding your mind, and that might be your happy place is right here, and the physical stuff is no good, you might just need to bite down and go, this is just flat out protecting the investment and elongating my effectiveness, because I don't want the fact, like, I was thinking about this, like, you think about the Apostle Paul talking about, hey, I train my body like an athlete, like I said earlier. Imagine what our New Testament would look like if Paul was physically unable to perform. I mean, he lists off his list of hardships. He's like, man, I was shipwrecked. Dude, you can't, he said, I spent a night and a day on the open sea. Like, at some point he had to tread water. He's going to be holding on to a piece of wood, trying to live. He did a lot of it on foot.
Yeah.
So if you physically can't move from here to there and move from point A to point B because your body, it can't handle it, think about what our New Testament would look like if he couldn't endure harsh conditions in prison because he physically couldn't handle it. It would have affected the work that was part of his purpose. So again, I'm not saying we have to live paranoid, but I think protect the investment.
I think that's really a good way to say it. Protect the investment. I tend to be more of a live in my head person myself. That's always kind of been a little bit of a struggle for me with the physical side of things. And I think, like a lot of women, have had kind of some negative experiences growing up that made you then have weird feelings about your body and weight and the way you controlled it and those kind of things that I just have to continue to like be mindful of and fight through. It's not a battle I've won yet. It's something I'm still working on, but I do think that mindset of protecting the investment, of going, okay, great. Like, that's wonderful that your mind matters to you and that you are investing, time and energy into developing this gift that you have and having great learning or understanding or education in a space or educating others in a space. You can't do that if you haven't taken care of yourself. I think that's a really, really healthy perspective. And I think you also called out a really important point. You're not telling people that if you don't have 6-pack abs, you're not a good follower of Jesus. Like, God bless Absolutely. You. If that's a goal that you want to set for yourself, do it. There's also nothing wrong with 6-pack abs. But but you don't have to make that the goal. You be able to, like, don't you want to be able to go take a long walk, you know, with your spouse and enjoy nature when you're in your 80s and still be able to go, you know, be physically active. It may not be a goal of yours to climb mountains, but like, don't you want to be able to take some laps around your neighborhood? Don't you want to be able to have the energy to, you know, travel, pursue things that you want to do? That I think is very, very healthy perspective to just go, what does that look like for me? What is healthy and balanced look like for me? And then I pursue that.
So here's an interesting, I don't have this in the notes, but it just sparked as you were talking. So a couple weeks ago, our youth group went to Cedar Point, which is a amusement park. And our daughter went. And so I picked her up when they got back. I was like, how'd it go? And she gets in the car. She's like, Dad, Brent Allen is a G. That was her first word. Brent Allen is a G.
Which is true.
Okay, so Brent Allen is the elder statesman on our staff. So he'd be our oldest staff member. Brent is a very healthy dude, health conscious guy. And so you have the oldest guy on our staff. I don't know how old Brent is, so I'm not going to put him out there like that, but he's got a full head of gray hair.
It's white. It's
a white hair.
Beautiful head of white hair.
So I said, why is Brent a G? She said, Dad, Brent had more energy than any teenager there. She said he rode every ride. He walked all over.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious. And he's so kind. And he's like Jesus. And he's all this. Okay, so I'm sitting there thinking, choices that Brent has made, literally as fundamental as what to put into his body or what not to put into his body. Whether to move his body or not move his body, right? He's not a power lifter. He's not trying to impress anybody. He's trying to have longevity. And because of that, he went in this season of his life uniquely positioned to impact the next generation. If he physically can't walk around that park and do this, he's at home or he's somewhere else or he's not making that impact. And you got to think, like, more than probably anybody else on that trip, that guy was in a position to be able to impact this next generation. Yeah. And a lot of that was made possible by his physical decisions. Yeah.
His ability to walk that park.
You know,
that's good.
Paul says at the end of 2 Timothy, right, which is, or in the book of 2 Timothy, which is, most historians have it dated, authorship, less than a year before he dies. And his language is, I have finished the race. You know, he says, I've kept the faith. And I finished the race, right? And again, he's using that language of going like, I ran my leg and I ran all the way through the finish line. And so I think the more we can make those decisions, like none of us, like Paul's a great example. Paul was put to death. So it's not even like we don't have full control of the longevity of our lives. Like a lot of things can happen. We know that. But as much as it's up to us, I think it's important to steward that opportunity the best we can. All right, so that's session 1. Any more thoughts on that before I give you the quick cliff notes of session 2?
Nope.
How are we doing on time, by the way?
I don't think you have a timer. I think you're doing all right.
50? Okay. So 10 minutes or so, and then we can bring it in. So session 2 is just like, I just titled it Habits. Okay. So the idea that, you know, visions and goals don't really mean anything without habits. I remember talking one time at the church, and I told a story about the year that you bought me a guitar for Christmas. And I was like, dude, I'm going to become a guitar player. Like, I'm going to be a great guitar player. So
World famous.
Yeah, I went to Walmart and I bought one of those posters that shows you where to put your finger, like chord chart. I was like, man, I'll probably by the end of the week, I'm going to be just like shredding this thing, you know, because it looks easy enough. It just, okay.
Yeah. All I have to do is put my fingers places.
Yeah. So I really thought I was going to be a guitar player, but I never developed the habits. I never did. Like I tinkered around with it. I played with it. But now if I had every single day said, I'm going to go 15 minutes a day. I'm going to do 30 minutes a day on the guitar. I'd be a really, 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 really good guitar player. That was 20 years ago. So if I had 20 years, 30 minutes, I mean, you start doing the math. Okay. So it has nothing to do with how good your intentions are. It doesn't have anything to do with how clearly you can see the vision. It really gets down to habits. And so, so I have 4 things in creating habits, or 4 habits. The first one is define reality. So I think that's scary, right? Like you see, I was mentioning like some of those, you get a glimpse into like those weight loss shows or people getting healthy. Often they'll step on a scale, they get a blood test, get their blood pressure taken. They do all these tests, and they start telling them reality. And you have a lot of these people who they start sobbing because they knew it wasn't good. They just didn't know how bad it was. And so defining reality, whatever it is, the reality of how bad is our relationship? How much bondage am I in? How unhealthy am I physically? That a lot of times people kind of would rather just put their head in the sand and not know. So I think you have to make a decision. I want to define reality. And then I think the second is a sustainable diet. So I've done this before. I've seen people before. You get hardcore on a diet, you get that momentum, but it's not sustainable. And often people, they want this thing to happen fast, right? I used to, when we first moved to town, I sold training, personal training. That was one of my jobs. And I would start with people's goals. Like, why are you here? Oh yeah, I'm getting married in 6 months. Yeah, it's summer's coming up. I want to be able to go to the pool and not be embarrassed. I just had a baby. I want to be able to walk her down the aisle someday. Whatever. They had their goal, their vision. And so then I'd be like, okay, what's your goal? Like, give me a time frame. They'd be like, oh yeah, I want to lose 30 pounds this month. A pound a day or something, or a pound a week. I'm thinking like, man, if you lose a pound a week, it's 52 pounds in a year. That's a lot. That's a ton. And I've literally had people say, I want to lose a pound a week. You're going to lose 365 pounds. Like, is that sustainable? Set up something that's sustainable. Or food, like people create diets with that mentality is like, I got to get to this goal. They get to the goal, but it's not sustainable. You have to look at what is sustainable. What are foods that you actually enjoy eating? Like, you're only going to allow yourself to be miserable for so long. And so that might take a little bit of like digging and experimenting and all of that. And error. But taking the frenetic pace away and going, what is it realistic for me to not eat sugar ever again?
Right.
For me, that's pretty realistic because I'm not a big sugar fan. But for me to go, hey, I'm not going to eat any more carbs. Like I did keto for a while and I was like, yep, I'm off. And I shredded up for a while or whatever. But that's not realistic, dude. I am going to eat some pasta. I'm going to eat some potatoes. I'm going to eat some tortilla chips. I am going to eat popcorn. I'm going to have some of that. So I think you got to find a diet that's sustainable instead of just trying to hurry up and get to the goal. And then you just don't sustain the change.
Yeah. It's long game for sure.
Related to that, I have enjoyable exercise. So again, at one point in my life, I was willing to suffer so bad that I'm gasping for air at the end. I'm in total and complete misery every time. As you get older, or again, depending on how you're wired, like you're like, I can't make myself miserable for an hour every day. And so you listen to David Goggins or you listen to whoever go, yeah, well, quit being a wimp, you know? It's like, yeah, that's why. I mean, there are certain people that appeals to. Right. There's lots of people. Most people are like, okay, dude, I guess I'm just a wimp.
You're like, my life is hard enough. I don't need to add complexity.
Yeah. So I got to take a freezing cold plunge every day and, to release the brown fats. And then I've got to eat food I hate and I'm going to go suffer. Like there's like 0.0001% of the world that will do that. It's not either or, right? It's like you can go, no, what is like enjoyable exercise? That's why I said, if you don't like weights or you don't like the gym, like some people just they don't like the environment. I like the environment. I go in there, I'm like, yeah, man, I get a way better workout when I go in because I like the kinetic energy. I like the smells of the place. I like all that stuff. Takes me back. Like not everybody is. So find what's sustainable for you. If you don't like working out in the morning, don't go, yeah, I'm going to start working out at 5 a.m. You won't sustain it.
No.
If you're doing, if that's not who you are. So I read a book one time called The Power of When, W-H-E-N, which talks about circadian rhythms. It talks about like it helps you kind of establish your chronotype based on how you prefer to sleep to kind of get you functioning in a way that is kind of true to who you are, way more sustainable. So that's a book I would recommend maybe to some if you're interested. So define reality, find a sustainable diet, an enjoyable exercise routine, and then the fourth is rest well. And I think that's one of the most elusive, probably least talked about part of health. We tend to go right to diet and exercise, which is certainly fundamental, but resting well is a huge one. And so I have in here some practical tips. So one is partner. That's not necessarily for everyone, but it might be. Like if you're like, man, I hate working out alone, or you just get in there. It's too easy to just quit on the workout. It's too easy to not give your best. Sometimes you work out with somebody, you see them putting out an effort, it inspires you. Maybe they pick an exercise you wouldn't have picked, but it's good for you. Also, if you're saying, hey, meet me, we're meeting here at 5:00. Okay. If it's just you might just go, you know what, forget it. But if someone's waiting on you, you're probably going to be a little more likely to go. I have in here meal prep. So I know we do this a lot. You'll set these containers. We're going to cook 5-6 days, have them right there so that when I'm hungry, I can reach for something and it's pretty much ready. I just got to heat it up. Often I think people make bad, particularly diet choices when they're hungry and they're grabbing the most accessible thing.
Right.
And often it's not a very healthy thing. Coming up with workouts you like. Another one is show up and start. So there are times like I'm like, when I think about this 1.5-hour workout I don't want to do or hour workout, I go, you know what? I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to work out for an hour. But I am going to show up and I am going to start working out.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just going to do one thing and leave, but I almost never do. Once I get going, you get the momentum going. And now I'm in, dude. Now I'm in. Yeah. I'm sweating. I'm good. So often it's like, don't talk yourself out of the hour. Just show up and start. I have another tip here is schedule workouts like a meeting. So you can literally put it in your calendar. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, we actually here at our church, we have exercise facility, a lot of job offices. They have a workout facility. You could literally schedule it in and not just go, hey, I'll get in if I can. No, put it in your schedule. Don't be afraid to do it in the middle of the day if you can. Like, if that's good energy for you, there are times I'll shoot out of here at noon or 1:00, or I'll do something in the middle of the day. And then another one I have is just do something every day. Do something every day. It doesn't have to be hour and 15 minutes. It might be, I'm going to hold a plank.
Right.
Or I'm going to do some calisthenics. I'm going to do 10 minutes. Something that you can do.
Yeah.
And if for nothing else, it's the habit.
Yeah.
It makes it habitual instead of, I'm not breaking the streak. I'm doing something. And that keeps you from one day of not exercising or eating right, turning into 2, into 3, into 4, into 5. And that's where, like, even again, psychologically, they'll talk about like cheat meals. Hey, on Friday, I'm just going to eat lasagna, or I'm going to eat pizza, or I'm going to eat cake, or whatever you eat. But the next day I'm getting back in because I don't want to string these together indefinitely, because sometimes one bad day turns into a bad month, turns into a bad year. And then it's that slide, right? So getting back on, like, don't let yourself get so low because you broke the rhythm. Just get back up and start back today.
Yeah. That's good advice.
Thoughts?
Solid stuff. I don't think there's a lot more to add to that. I mean, those are just really practical pieces to help somebody get on a journey and stay on a journey. And I think that is the hardest part for a lot of people, right? Is getting something going that's sustainable.
Yeah. I think I'll say this last thing. I think it's incredibly common that leaders, people that are taking care of other people, often get so into that they don't take care of themselves. Yeah. It's very normal to be thinking about, how am I going to help this person? How am I going to, what's their problems that I can help with? How do I support them? And it can almost feel selfish to step back and prioritize yourself. And I think certainly that could slip into being self-absorbed, but I think you're doing everyone a great service to step back and go, I'm going to take care of myself. I am going to think about, my own health and not become, I know I'm going to be talking to these pastors. A lot of them, you just see it all the time. They're giving. And it's to their own detriment. And ultimately it's to everyone's detriment.
That's right.
If you don't, kind of take time to think about this, focus on it, prioritize it. So
yeah. It's a good word.
All right. Well,
I appreciate you.
Good dialogue, Shaylyn Ford.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
All right.
See ya.